Welcome back to The Art of Healing. It's my pleasure today to introduce Tom Connor from Traditional Healthcare. Welcome.
Thank you.
So perhaps if you'd like to tell us what traditional healthcare is.
Well, it's a very, very large topic. Basically, it's an organisation that we started about 5 years ago in response to a trip to India that I went on, and my partner Tash. We went to India and just saw a drastic need for help, for basic healthcare. So it's now grown into something a lot bigger than we thought it would have been at the start. We've been raising money, basically building a sustainable healthcare facility in India, and it's really developed a new philosophy in practice, especially for me. From practicing in India, I've developed a really different understanding of how to treat patients and what I think should then be addressed, I suppose, in most practices and clinics.
Okay, and so what's your actual background yourself, and what inspired you to get into doing this?
So a bit of a varied background. When I was really young, I was in viticulture for about 7 years. I then got sick from chemicals, so I used to spray all the chemicals, got really sick, went to the doctor and said, just quit, it's pretty simple. I was then a bit scared because a fair few people that I knew got cancer at the same time. They got diagnosed and they were in the same industry. So I thought, I don't want to be suffering from cancer, so I started studying Chinese medicine. I studied under a master called Professor Wong in Northcote, in Melbourne.
In Northcote, well, what college was that?
The Australian Academy of Traditional Chinese Medicine. So it's one of the oldest running. It started in the late 70s. Professor Wong is one of the top, he's a bit old now, Qigong practitioners, Tai Chi practitioners in the world. He was the man who judged all of the Tai Chi World Championships and things like that. So he knew his stuff. So I spent 4 years with him. Then I went to Southern School for 3 years and got my certificate and accreditation there.
And so you've set up a clinic in India, in Dartom, which is that northern India?
So if you can draw a line between Kolkata and Delhi, it's 325 k's towards Delhi from Kolkata. So it's in the state of Jharkhand, which is one of the poorest states in India.
And what inspired you to go from being in a college studying to India to reach out to other people?
Well, I love travelling. Every year I travel, so I've been to China many times while studying, and I just was close to finishing my study. I thought, I'm going to do a world trip, and I had no intentions of volunteering. I'd never volunteered a day in my life before that, but I read in a magazine about a person who went to Punjab, which is a little village in West Bengal, and they volunteered in an acupuncture clinic. I thought that would be interesting. I didn't think about, I'm going to go and help. I just thought that would be interesting to do. I went there and was amazed by 100 patients a day coming to the clinic, and they had no other health care. And the results they had would testify to. They said, my uncle wasn't walking and now he's walking. I just thought, well, that's hard to believe, but after being there for 5 and 6 weeks, you started to see these things happening. On the last few days that I was there, I was with the manager, and he took me out to do an acupuncture camp in his hometown, which is Dartom. We turned up there for the first day, and there was a good 300-400 people waiting for the Western doctors to come, and we started treating. In that first day I probably treated 125 people and couldn't get through all of them, no way. There's still people waiting. So the next day we turned up and there was as big a crowd the next day, and we're not going to treat them all. So we started treating, and then the crowd started to realise that we weren't going to treat them all. So they started to push down through the doors, and they pushed the security guards out of the way, which were just our friends. They weren't real security guards. They're leaning through the windows trying to grab us. Can't speak English, all speaking Bengali, and I couldn't speak Bengali, but they're all pointing at sore spots or pointing to their child who looks malnutrition and really sick, and we had to be taken away because the whole room filled with people instantly, and you couldn't help them, and we had to be taken away. It's like my life that I lived, I consider now a fairly selfish life before then, and so I just thought, well, I should do something. These people obviously need something, and there's a desperate desire for having healthcare, and I thought, well, I'll do my best to provide that for them.
It's very interesting, isn't it, now that there's a huge, volunteer lots of people volunteering to do this sort of thing around the world, and we've got Medicine Without Borders, and we've got a lot of volunteers going into Africa. There's a lot of news all the time about these sorts of things. So in India, and from what you've seen, what is it particularly that Western people can bring to these areas where you think would be practicing their own traditional healthcare anyway?
Yeah. Well, to start with, I and many other volunteers would take the philosophy, oh, we're going to come in and really make a big difference, and not realising that we actually need a lot. We are lacking a lot in our culture as well. So what I've seen that we can bring to poor areas, not just India, around the world, but particularly India, because that's where I've been most of the time, we can bring financial support, we can bring educational tools and actual physical things like books and computers, because they just don't have the money to buy those things. So the money, the funding that we can bring can then help with training and help with basic healthcare, basic needs that they don't have. For example, in the village there is no power, there is no water, there is no drainage, there is no toilets. So there's no roads in the village. So they're lacking almost every basic necessity. They've got mobile phones though. but so we can come to a village like that, and we can bring expertise and we can bring funding. But one of the things that really I've woken up to is they can provide us with not just equal, but I think far more learning than what we can provide them with funding.
That's what I was going to ask you next. So it's almost, even though it may not seem that way, we're actually, as Western people, we're actually getting some sort of healing perhaps out of the work that's occurring. Can you tell me?
Well, a little bit of a story. Some of the volunteers, they go there with a very strong perspective of, I'm going to educate and I'm going to teach, and they find it very difficult to be in a village like that, because India is really grinding about routines. It's just about being in the moment and living every day for what it is. So people go there with this, I'm going to really help, and they find it difficult. And they start to see that this place is just one community. They really look after each other. Even though they've got hardly any food, at one stage they had to rely on the government giving them a bag of rice to live, because there was such a drought, there was no food. But when we go there, they still give us their food. They'll still kill their chickens for us, and they've got no food. And
we just don't get that, do we?
No, we don't get that.
Thing.
And it teaches us this community that we have. I see we've really lost here, or maybe we didn't have it. I don't know. I've been around long enough to know, but I'm being taught community and the strength and the power in being in such a good community that you feel nourished by being in something like that. You feel supported, and we just don't have that support here.
The other thing I wanted to ask you is that are there people coming out of schools here, like naturopathic schools, and who are seeking to go to sorts of places like Dartong, where you've got your clinic, and they can get a lot more training, I guess, on the ground?
Yeah, the interest in getting out there and travelling, because I think the first article I read, actually a few of my friends read as well, and I thought that was interesting. Now we've put a few articles and we've given a few presentations at schools, and the idea is really starting to grow with a lot of the practitioners, student practitioners. We're lucky enough to have our 2 or 3 months off around Christmas time, which is the perfect time to be in India. So it's the safest of no malaria, it's perfect weather. So last year we had about 8 go at about Christmas time, and now we've got about 15 to 20 wanting to go. Really interested, sending emails saying, I want to be there. I can see the need of not just the people, but of me needing training and understanding that.
Well, it's an absolutely fabulous initiative, and we're so happy to be involved with the Art of Healing, with what you're doing there, and looking forward to publishing a lot more on your work and some of the issues which seem to be quite similar to some of the chronic illnesses we're experiencing here. So look out for some more information. Thank you so much for joining us today.